This channel is made possible by viewers like you. My viewers, subscribers, and patrons greatly help to keep this channel going. I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for all of you. Please make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any uploads. And if you'd like to go the extra mile, please check out my Patreon page. For just $1 a month, you'll get access to what I'm working on, previews of upcoming content, and even early videos, along with other tier options for those that are interested. Thank you, and now on to the video. The prequel era has so many great games that came from it. I will come out and say it right here too, that I'm a big fan of the prequel films as well. Yes, they have their flaws, especially with some of the stiff delivery and odd lines at times, but as an overall tale, they do bring a lot of good to the table. Episode 3 is easily one of my favorite Star Wars films, and it has some spectacular lightsaber sequences. So yes, I will defend the prequels. They had a specialness to them, with even Lucas providing new interesting characters, plenty of new and captivating locations and planets, along with what seems like an endless supply of really cool designs for the troopers, Jedi, weapons, vehicles, and more. As a side note, this is something that was missing with the sequel trilogy. They didn't really provide anything cool that was new. They were just relying on nostalgia and ended up writing and executing it very badly. But back to the prequels. With new films at the time, it always meant that new games were going to come in to sort of cash in on the excitement surrounding those movies. Generally, the prequel games were really good to even great in some cases. Sure, there were some duds, mainly found within the GBA library by THQ, but when you think back to this time, I'm sure you can think of many great games, like Republic Commando or the Battlefront titles. Oddly enough, the developers behind the Battlefront games were responsible for another Star Wars title before they made those games. Star Wars The Clone Wars meant to be an immediate follow-up to the Attack of the Clones. You could watch the film and then just jump right into the game to see where the story continues there. This is a Star Wars title that easily deserves more attention than it gets, and it holds up really well. And apparently it's coming back this June through the PS Plus Premium program. So what even is Star Wars Clone Wars? The game kind of does a bit of everything, and even in some ways it reminds me a bit of Rogue Squadron, but with a lot of focus on the ground combat. The game largely focuses on vehicle combat, with some appreciated breaks with some gunship levels, and even Jedi-focused ones too. You will pilot everything from early chicken walkers to the very reliable and awesome Republic tank, along with other vehicles that even include some mounts. The levels themselves are pretty straightforward, as you pretty much need to blow up everything that is coming at you. So how is it to control the tank? The tank pretty much operates with the standard first-person shooter controls. You can easily strafe, boost around to close the distance between an enemy, or use it as a means to dodge an attack as well. The lasers are your main weapons, along with some useful missiles too. A zoom is provided to hit targets better at a distance. Controlling your tank and shooting is really enjoyable. The missiles pack a punch, and oftentimes destroyed enemies will break apart and even flip around when you hit them, adding this enjoyable impact effect whenever you destroy an enemy. The early AT-ST Walker is another vehicle that you'll get to use, and that is pretty powerful, but it's on the slower side of things. So yes, you'll be spending most of your time within the tank, along with other vehicles, and you get lots of really good gameplay options. A few points within the game, you'll get to control a Jedi and slice and dice your way through enemies, with some limited force powers. Controlling the Jedi and the combat here is rather clunky, and is easily the worst part of the game. It is appreciated that you can get some Jedi combat in, but it does feel like this aspect of the game was not ironed out enough. Now the gunship, on the other hand, is a power trip. These are the flying levels, and you are armed with your main lasers, missiles, and even homing green lasers that just wreck everything that they hit. Oftentimes you can take out many foes at once with them. The gunship is a great example of player empowerment, and just a delight when these stages pop up. Honestly, these are ones that are so good that I wish that we had a few more thrown into the game. Something else I really like are how the levels will often feature parts where you switch what gameplay it's focusing on. For example, you may start one level within a tank, and then switch to a gunship and then end up playing as a Jedi. Most levels have you switching between at least two forms of gameplay, and at times it can be two different vehicles too. Something else I appreciated was how the Clone Wars allows the player to relive some of the most climactic elements from the Attack of the Clones, but it's done from a different perspective than we saw in the movie. For the most part, we followed Obi-Wan and Anakin Anakin through this battle in the film, but in the game you are playing from other perspectives during this pivotal engagement. For example, the first mission has you setting up the invasion of the Republic before the fight. It is pretty cool to see this part before the big battle starts, along with playing a role in allowing the fleet to land. Then you get to play within the battle itself, mainly focusing on the different actions these vehicles were in. While I do like when movie tie-in games allow you to experience events from the film, I also like when these games expand upon what we saw in those films too. This is one title that easily gets overshadowed, even with it being made by Pandemic. Personally, I think when fans look back on this period, the bigger games like Battlefront really do overshadow this title. But oddly enough, I think this is the game that essentially got Pandemic the job for those Battlefront games. Here you get a game that both acts like a movie tie-in game and allows for room for an original story to take place as well. This was essentially our first look into the actual Clone Wars. The Clone Wars does make for a really good short and sweet experience, with its brisk campaign and plenty of unlockables to grab, along with additional side modes and multiplayer options, and even a co-op endurance type of a thing. This game definitely brought the content, and it featured all of that memorable John Williams music, along with some of his new pieces that he made for Attack of the Clones. Pandemic really knew how to do it right, and this game has held up pretty well over the years. So now we know the game is still good. The interesting thing is that it's now going to be more available for players to try out for themselves, because currently the only way to easily buy this game is on the Xbox. Now with it being released on the PlayStation, a whole other group of people will be able to try it out. I just wish that this was coming to the Switch and PC as well, because it was never released on the PC when it first came out. The interesting thing about this PS2 release is that it's going to feature some of the same benefits that the new PS1 and PSP games have had on the PS4 and 5. So over the past few years, Sony has been slowly releasing other beloved classics, like say Siphon Filter, through this emulation that allows players to save whenever they want, and a feature that I really enjoy is that you can rewind the game at any point. This can greatly cut down on some of the more harsher elements of an early title, and allows for more accessibility to a modern player, while still allowing for a longtime fan to play the game without any of those features if they so choose. The PSP games that were released on the PlayStation so far do not have this feature. Years ago we got a handful of PS2 games, and it seemed like Sony dropped the idea of doing more. And now with this revamped program, we seem to be getting PS2 games with the same treatment, of bringing it back like the older PS1 and PSP games. I think this is really good news, and it could even mean that more titles will be on the way, and provide an easier access to them for people today. I think it is a given that most, if not all, of the PS2 Star Wars games will probably be coming back at some point, but I hope that we see other titles as well. I am still crossing my fingers for the old Medal of Honor and Bond games to come back too. When I saw that Star Wars Clone Wars was coming back, I just had to talk about it. It is personally one of my favorite and most beloved Star Wars games from my childhood, and even better, it still plays great today. Are you excited for the Clone Wars to come back? Have you played it before? What other PS2 games would you like to see return? Let me know all of this in the comments down below. If you're interested in being notified of new videos, please hit the subscribe button and bell. And if you would like to support the channel and get early access to content, please check out my Patreon. All of the links will be at the end of this video and within the description. And thank you very much for watching.